Herantis Pharma. I'm Pekka Simula, the CEO for Herantis, and our focus is regenerative medicine. And in specific, we have two assets currently in clinical proof of concept studies. One is CDNF, and if the name reminds you of conventional neurotrophic factors, please don't let that mislead you. It's very different from the conventional NTFs, aiming to stop progression of Parkinson's disease. So a very exciting clinical study ongoing at the moment. And our other asset, Lymfactin, the first and only clinical stage gene therapy in the world that repairs damages of the lymphatic system. And both of these are based on globally leading science in their fields, so really robust science. And let's move forward to CDNF. So you all should certainly know what Parkinson's disease is about. The one point to emphasize, however, is that it's been estimated that a disease-stopping treatment, not a cure to Parkinson's, but something that would stop progression, would save the society over $400,000 per patient in the US. And this is exactly what we are aiming at with CDNF. It's a neuroprotective factor. It's just like the previous presentation, it's an endogenous protein, it's a conserved protein, and it's a very potent protector of neurons from ER stress, apoptosis, and also neuroinflammation. So very kind of hot topics at the moment in the research of neurodegenerative diseases. It also directly inhibits the aggregation of alpha-synuclein, so that of course even further increases the interest in Parkinson's disease. And as a matter of fact, we have a broad preclinical data set suggesting that in Parkinson's disease, CDNF not only alleviates the motor symptoms of the disease, but it also alleviates non-motor symptoms, which is a huge unmet clinical need and has the potential to stop progression. Just one slide from a non-human primate study. This was funded by the Michael J. Fox Foundation and was done in MPTP lesion rhesus monkey model. So a severe model of Parkinson's disease. The dark staining here indicates dopaminergic function. And about 80% loss of dopaminergic neurons after the lesioning. And then after this lesioning and after 3 monthly doses of CDNF, so just 3 doses of CDNF, we were able to restore the dopaminergic function back to about 60% from the 20% after the lesioning. Obviously, CDNF is not a miracle drug. We're not saying that it regenerates new neurons. But just like in the clinical Parkinson's disease, the disease progresses slowly and the dopaminergic neurons don't immediately die. They just first lose their phenotype. They lose their synaptic connections. And CDNF very potently helps the neurons in that stage of the disease to restore their synaptic connections and to regain their phenotype. This result very nicely correlated with improvements in both gross and fine motor function in the animals. But even more importantly and more excitingly, in this study, which was done in collaboration with the University of Pittsburgh, and they have years and years of expertise in this model of Parkinson's disease, they said that for the first time ever they saw a compound also addressing the non-motor symptoms in these animals. So the MPTP lesioned animals are very apathic. They just sit in their cage. And already during the study, the animal caretakers could say that one group of the animals was kind of coming back alive again. They started looking for food in their cage. They started reacting to their caretakers. And this was the optimal dose with CDNF. I mentioned conventional neurotrophic factors such as GDNF. We actually had GDNF as a positive control in this study because it has worked very well in this model, and that was a request of the Fox Foundation. And GDNF group didn't show any improvement in non-motor symptoms. As said, this is all based on very robust science. There are actually a couple of very, very exciting manuscripts currently in preparation, so we're really looking forward to having those out. And in the meanwhile, we have progressed to a randomized placebo-controlled proof of concept study. This is funded by the European Union by a prestigious Horizon 2020 grant, thanks to the fact that their assessment was that it's based on leading science and has the greatest potential to advance clinical practice. So we're really aiming at breakthrough in Parkinson's disease. And of course, this is a totally novel approach in a field where there has been a lot of failure in the past. Now, CDNF is an 18 kilodalton protein. It doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. And therefore, in this study, we are using a very sophisticated high-tech device, very similar to a deep brain stimulation. So we are injecting the protein directly in the brains, in the putamen of the patient. It's a one-time surgery, very much like DBS surgery, to implant the device. And then once a month thereafter, the patient simply goes to a doctor, is connected to a pump. There is a small port. The only visible thing in the patient is a small port behind one ear. So the patient is connected to a pump, infused the protein, disconnected, and goes home. Obviously, this still limits the applicability of CDNF in many other neurodegenerative diseases where such approach wouldn't be so readily acceptable. And hence we are actually very excited about having a month ago licensed the next generation CDNF from the University of Helsinki. The same researchers who discovered CDNF a decade ago have now made another discovery where they have shown that a non-invasive next generation version of CDNF, subcutaneously administered, results in an exactly comparable efficacy in an in vivo model of Parkinson's disease. And this has obviously raised a lot of interest already in the past month after we announced this. So that's our CDNF asset. Our other asset, Lymfactin, as said, it's the first and only clinical stage gene therapy in the world that repairs damages of the lymphatic system. Secondary lymphedema is, of course, not as well known a disease as Parkinson's disease, but actually it's even more common. There are estimated 140 million people in the world suffering from lymphedema. And I think one picture tells everything. It's a huge impact on a quality of life. This patient here is a breast cancer survivor who has, as a consequence of breast cancer treatments, developed lymphedema in the arm. And that can really mean that the arm is permanently twice the volume of the healthy arm. It's very painful, very much reduces mobility, and is a huge quality of life issue. There are no approved pharmacological treatments for secondary lymphedema. And the timing in our development is very interesting because the patient advocacy group LEARN has now over the past 2-3 years become very vocal and visible. They have celebrities like Kathy Bates, herself a patient with lymphedema, become very vocal spokespersons. So the awareness of lymphedema has significantly increased. And the approach in our gene therapy is actually really simple. It's kind of a textbook example of a regenerative treatment. So it's a single dose administration of the gene therapy in the area where there are damages in the lymphatic system. And it's a gene therapy vector that expresses VEGF-C, the growth factor which is highly specific to lymph angiogenesis. So the transient expression of VEGF-C locally results in sprouting of new lymphatic capillaries, and then those eventually mature into a functional lymphatic network. So the aim simply is to locally cure the damages of the lymphatic system. Again, based on very robust science and collaboration with Professor Kari Alitalo, who really is the considered in the world as the father of lymphatics and discoverer of VEGF-C. In the development of Lymfactin, we have completed a phase 1 study that was also done in real patients. in a setup where we combine Lymfactin with lymph node transplantation surgery, which is a procedure that's often offered to severe lymphedema patients. And it's been safe, well tolerated. We have also seen some promising quality of life improvements in the patients, but obviously that's non-controlled data. So what we're looking forward to is data from our ongoing phase 2 study that will have a relatively long follow-up though, so we expect unblinding by the end of 2020. Even though there are no pharmacological approved treatments at the moment, it's a significant market. Our market research suggests that just the current indication, just as an adjunct to lymph node transplantation surgery, it's a 600 million market combining EU and the US. And obviously, if it works in that setup, we believe that it has significant potential in other secondary lymphedemas. So what we're now doing is the ongoing clinical studies are fully funded, but we're of course looking forward to the next stage in growth. So now we are starting to look for funding for getting ready to plan the pivotal studies, the phase 2-3 studies, and obviously also the next generation non-invasive CDNF. And we are currently listed in Nasdaq First North Helsinki. Definitely not the lively market as, for instance, Stockholm is. So we have a very, very limited liquidity of our stock simply for the reason that Finland is not your optimal market for a biotech company. So, of course, a company in our position will also consider some alternative markets sometime in the future. So to summarize, 2 very exciting biologicals based on leading science currently in clinical proof of concept studies in large and well-defined markets, significant unmet clinical needs. CDNF aims at a breakthrough in Parkinson's disease. Lymfactin aims at a breakthrough in the treatment of lymphedema. And looking forward to a very exciting next 18 months and especially readout of the Parkinson's study in the second half of next year. Thank you very much.